Hello, I'm Michael LaChapelle, and welcome back to Innovation by Design's look at business models. This is Module 10. And we've reached the final of the 9 components of the business model canvas. The second half of sustainability area, cost structure. Now, this component is about the costs incurred to operate the business model. Much like key activities, in this component, we have to be careful about getting bogged down in too much detail. We're not looking to have a budget line item level of detail. What we are concerned with is cost centers. Now, the costs of the business are derived from a consideration of the other components of the business model, activities, resources, and partnerships. There are a number of key questions regarding the business's costs. What are the most important costs inherent in your whole business model? What are the most expensive activities and most expensive assets? And interestingly enough, something that's often forgotten, where are the specific costs related to the acquisition and retention strategies or costs related to your channels? And finally, what are your partnerships going to cost you? Different businesses will have very different cost structures. For example, platform businesses like Airbnb and Uber will have very high technology costs for the infrastructure to enable the transactions. But they will also have costs around curation and problem solving, as trust is a critical component of a platform business. Now, in the pharmaceutical industry, companies will have very high R&D costs, but manufacturing and distribution costs tend to be relatively low because of the volume at which they operate. Over in the music industry, businesses will have very high costs for marketing and promotion. But if you look at Spotify, their costs are largely around licensing. And businesses like Groupon will have very high costs associated with a large sales force that's necessary on the street to engage businesses. Now, the type of cost should also be considered. Costs may be fixed, where they remain the same despite the volume of business, example, your rent, your equipment, or costs may be variable. They may vary proportionately with the volume of the business, happening a lot in retailing and manufacturing. Now, in some cases, the business executives or representatives may want to see costs including things like salaries and operational costs. Now, in that case, one could include a cost center called Salary, General, and Administration, SG&A, and it operates as a catch-all for all of these kinds of costs. However you wish to name it, rolling up general business costs into one center is always a good idea. Now, the last thing to consider is sometimes, when a specific cost is important to the success of the business, it makes sense to single out that cost as its own center and track it. To summarize, costs are derived from all the other components of the business model. Now, as a check and balance, you should review each of the components of the canvas and look for cost items to be included in the structure. Now, costs may be fixed or they may be variable. And remember, we are concerned with cost centers rather than the specific line item detail.